Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Nakamura, and I am the owner-operator of Wavesofki Energy Work. I am a Reiki master, a shamanic Reiki practitioner, and a crystal singing bowl sound therapy practitioner. Now, I know that shamanic Reiki is not an energy healing modality that many of you are familiar with. So I incorporate different shamanic tools in with my Reiki sessions, such as accessing your Akashic records based on the intention that you bring to the session that day. I also use crystals, the native frame drum, rattles, tuning forks, and feathers. So I am able to do sessions in person or online, either through Zoom or Skype. So being somewhere else in the world is not really an issue, as I have clients in Norway, Colombia, Vancouver, and here in Alberta that, outside of the Calgary area. The focus of the interviews that I do is to introduce you to different healing modalities that are available to you. So each person resonates with different modalities and different energy workers. My dream is to see everyone becoming more aware, more empowered, and involved in their healing and in their health and well-being. Whether it's through Reiki, Lomi, shamanic coaching, breath work, acupuncture, systemic constellation workshops, sound therapy, the list goes on and on and on. I just ask you to be open to listening to what is out there and what is available to you and what resonates with you, to maybe give it a try and see what comes up. So my guest today is Jennifer Engracio. She is a teacher, a certified shamanic coach, a Reiki master, Lomi practitioner, and the owner-operator of Spiral Dance Shamanics. Jennifer has been a student of shamanism for over 15 years and has self-published 3 books, one of which is now available on Amazon. And the books that she has self-published are The Magic Circle, Shamanic Ceremonies for the Child and the Child Within. And that book looks like this. The Women's Power Stories, Honoring the Feminine Principle of Life. And Dreaming of Cupcakes, A Food Addict's Shamanic Journey into Healing. And this is the one that is available on Amazon. I have had the honor and the pleasure of knowing Jen for the past 3 years. She has been an inspiration, a strong role model, and a very wise friend. Thank you, Jen, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Becky.
So what inspired, I guess maybe first, if you could give us a background on being a teacher, and I know like you are not most people's idea of elementary, primary, or like secondary school is, going into the school and teaching. You do it more from as a distance teacher. Is that correct?
Well, I started out as a public school teacher, so I've been an educator for 20 years now, and I started out in public schools for the first 4 years. But I was in those 4 years, I saw the systemic problems that were happening in schools. That, it's kind of like a house. You can move around the furniture, but it's not going to really change the foundations or what the problems are and how the structure is set up. So really early on, I was able to see that I wasn't able to really give the kids and their families what they needed in that setting. And there were just too many constraints. And so I moved over to working with families that were unschooling and homeschooling. And mostly families also that had either never put their children into institutions, schools, or then had taken their kids out of institutions for various reasons, mostly because their needs weren't being met, or some cases their kids had experienced quite a lot of trauma in schools. And so I've been doing that work since 2004, helping families to create learning environments at home and in their communities for their kids. But a lot of the families that are attracted to me are also families who have earth-based or shamanic practices as their spiritual practice in their home. So it also makes sense to work with an educator that understands that. So I work with a lot of Indigenous families. I work with a lot of people that practice shamanism and earth-based traditions from all over the world as well.
So you have students all over the world?
In BC. But I have supported parents all over the world. I can say that.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So what inspired you to get into shamanism and energy healing?
Really desperation. In my 20s, I after a pretty after a really major life event, I entered into quite a deep depression, and I was suicidal for part of my 20s. And I kind of, just in a last-ditch effort to figure out how to stay on the planet, I started just exploring. I'd always been a spiritual person, and thank goodness I had a grandma who really kept me connected to the spiritual aspect of life. Like, she really validated that for me. So I'd never lost that connection. But after seeing a few conventional therapists and doctors having that really not work for me, I thought, well, I'm going to try the spiritual path, because that's something that's always made sense to me. And I've always found a lot of healing and solace there. And that's when I really started looking at different modalities. I started out as a pranic healer, and I did that work for a while, until one day at clinic, my teacher said to me, "You don't belong in this modality." And I was like, "Oh God, here I go again, like moving to something else, right? My whole life, you don't belong here." But one thing she did say to me was, she just said, "You have really natural shamanic instincts, and that's the modality I think that you are meant to be in." I had always really been connected with Indigenous culture since I was a really little girl. I grew up by a reserve. I had friends in school that were also Indigenous, and the worldview just really made sense to me. And it felt like it was speaking to the way that I experience my spirituality in the world. So yeah, that's kind of a Cliff Notes version, but that's how I got into it.
You grew up in Vancouver, isn't that correct? So was it the North Vancouver tribe then that you were? I'm just trying to because I lived in Vancouver, and just I know that there's the Musqueam Reserve, the one down the Musqueam, and then there's the one in North Vancouver.
Yeah, I was born on Musqueam territory, and I grew up in East Van for most of my life. But then in high school, I moved to North Van, and I lived right next to the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in North Vancouver, on the way to Deep Cove, if people are familiar with that area.
One thing I really like about the North Vancouver Reserve is that the elders made sure that their tribe was really well looked after, and that they were very fortunate in that the land that they had, they were able to. There were some very profitable businesses on them, and they were able to keep their tribe's money invested wisely. Other than that, I don't know how the life, like the Indigenous culture itself, how well they made sure to foster that and keep it strong in their community. But I know that many of them that I met were like lovely souls, very, very warm people. So, yeah. So then you got into, or where did the Lomi Lomi come into?
Since I was really little, I've always been able to, I've always done healing work with my hands. I didn't know that that's what I was doing when I was little, but I would, massage, my mom's feet if after a long day at work, if somebody was in pain. It was just a really natural impulse for me. And as a kid, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I couldn't explain it. I just knew that it felt right. And I was very intuitive with that practice. And so this is also trying to cliff notes a very complex question, but when I was 6, my family went on a vacation to Hawaii. We were on the island of Oahu. And I remember feeling really at home there, to the point where I cried when we were getting on the plane to go home. I didn't want to leave. I was devastated. And it's the first time I've ever had a reaction like that to anywhere. Thankfully, there was a really lovely Hawaiian stewardess who just connected with me, and she seemed to know what I needed. And I was kind of her helper for the plane ride home, and it just helped me to transition out of that. But in 2004, when I really started to look at more different healing modalities, I worked with a Taoist teacher who actually did a lot of workshops in a Lomi Lomi house, in a halau in Vancouver. And so that was my first kind of, like, I guess, introduction to Lomi. But it wasn't until I went to Hawaii in 2011 and I started to, on a women's journey, to really connect with the goddess Pele, that I started to have a different experience with, and starting to put some pieces together around the Lomi Lomi, and that this was kind of naturally what I was doing. And so in 2013, I ended up doing starting my Lomi Lomi training. And I really resonate with the Hawaiian traditions as well. And they make a lot of sense to me, that, so much trauma is captured in our bodies, is stuck in our tissue. And the ancient Hawaiians, they understood this, that if we actually wanted to stay balanced, we had to actually work every day on clearing body, heart, mind, spirit. That they tended not to carry into the next day, because they had this practice of Lomi Lomi. They didn't carry whatever happened that day into the next day. So Lomi Lomi was done as a preventative daily by families at the end of the day. And it's got many forms. So Lomi Lomi doesn't just look one way, because the lineages come down through families, the Lomi lineages. So depending on what lineage you've learned, that's the lineage that you are, working within when you do Lomi. But also, the ancestors keep teaching you of that lineage, keep teaching you as you practice and as you do your work as a Lomi Lomi practitioner. So over the years, I had my basic training, but over the years, I've kept learning other things from them. So it's a very mysterious and potent way of learning. Different than Western society tends to do it. If you show up with books and a computer and a pen, they're going to look at you like, yeah, that's not how we do it.
As well, I know that together with the Lomi Lomi, that you also incorporate, or you sometimes use Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono.
Yeah. Tricky way to say it, yeah.
So for those who may not know what it is, could you kind of give us a brief explanation of how because I find that is also a very gentle and non-judgmental way of asking for forgiveness, for apologizing, for just releasing any negatives that we may carry forward into the next day. So maybe I don't know if it's part of Lomi Lomi, but I feel that this is a very useful tool for people to have.
I do bring it into Lomi Lomi, but it is a separate practice, and again, it's handed down through lineages. So every lineage will have their own way of doing Ho'oponopono. In the West, a lot of people know the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is a good start, but that's not the practice. What the practice does is, so in Hawaiian traditions, the whole goal is to maintain your sovereignty as an individual within community. So really, all forgiveness comes back to forgiveness of the self. So I might be angry or upset about an interaction that happened with another person, but when I go to do Ho'oponopono practice, what I'm doing is I'm going into myself to clear whatever that is that's not balanced inside of me that caused that disturbance with the other person. Even if it feels like the other person instigated it, or they're making my life hell, the way that energy works is that if we maintain our sovereignty, then things can't hook into us. But we know that we've gone off track when we get hooked in by those things. And then depending on what it is that you got hooked by or triggered by, some of those things take a longer time to clear. Other things are a little bit quicker, but the more that you practice it, like, practicing it on a daily basis or a momentary basis, for some people, like when I was healing my addiction, it was constant throughout the day. So I found a way of doing it that was quick, that I could do throughout the day, just to train it in, to get it to be like a regular part of my toolbox. But there's many different ways to do it, depending on, what family or what tradition you are studying with or working within.
So I'm going to come back to maybe some of the shamanic practices that you do, because I would like to piggyback onto what you were talking about in regards to your the addictions, and that was what prompted you to write your book, Dreaming of Cupcakes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge your courage and your willingness to be vulnerable in order to write this book and to bring it out to people, so that other people who may be having similar issues or that can be inspired by your journey and heal through whatever ways that they resonate with. So I would like to, if possible, if you could talk about some of that, that would be beautiful. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. It was a hard book to write. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever written so far. I mean, I don't know what Spirit's bringing into my life for the next 50 years, but it took it was tricky to write because, when you're, and I did a lot of ceremony around that book. And it was finally my grandpa's spirit that came to me, my paternal grandpa's spirit that came to me when I was hiking one day, just minding my own business. He said, I know you're scared, but you have to write that book. Yeah, sorry. It's a bit emotional thinking about it. He was an addict. He was an alcoholic. And the message was just like, it was very clear. He's like, I know it's going to be hard, but you'll figure out a way to write it in a way that doesn't blame people, that doesn't blame family members, or because I think the important after I finished writing it, and I went through the process of writing it over 3 years, because I had to do a lot of healing ceremonies throughout as I was writing it to make sure that I was staying with my intention of writing it so that it would be a truthful book, but a book that still honored my ancestors, and also was a book where people could really kind of get a look into addiction, like what it's like from the inside, somebody that's addicted. And then also, because a lot of family members and people who don't have addictions that disable their life, I mean, we all have addictions. It's a problem, and it's always an energy drain. I don't care if you're eating chips on a couch at night, or you're doing a line of cocaine. It's still an energy drain. It's just that I think it's hard sometimes for people to understand who family members and people who love people for whom their lives have become so disabled by the addiction, to understand what's possibly going on. And I wrote it in part to elicit more compassion, but I also wanted people to see the link between intergenerational trauma and addiction. Because if we have, this is what drives my work with humans, is that if each of us were to do our intergenerational trauma healing work, we all have that, then we would live in a really different world. And we would live in a world where we're not destroying the planet. The two are connected, right? Mm-hmm. So, although we're all responsible for our own actions, including, our parents, our grandparents, the people who abused us, the people who neglected us as kids, whatever the story is, although we're all responsible for our own actions, the other piece is that trauma is only really now becoming mainstream in terms of the science of it, what we know, how it affects people. Mm-hmm. And we have a long way to go before we stop stigmatizing things like addictions, which are rooted in intergenerational trauma. It's a lot easier to incarcerate people with addictions, mm-hmm. Or criminalize them once they've broken into a store or harmed somebody or something like that. But we have to start understanding why people use addiction as a strategy for coping. And then we have to put pieces of community in place so those people can heal. I healed because I had a really supportive shamanic community of people who had already done a lot of this foundational healing work. And they were able to hold a space for me while I worked on these pieces, but they were also able to teach me tools so that I could heal these pieces. So like I said, for some people, that might look like going to a counselor who's really skilled with trauma. For me, that didn't work. So for me, I had to find a spiritual way of understanding what I was going through. And I'm a dreamer, so I from the time I was a really little girl, working with the dream world and with my dreamscape to understand my psyche, that was just always my go-to. So it was a good fit. And I didn't feel like I was looking for somebody out there to fix me or to tell me what was going on. Mm-hmm. I needed a community that would allow me to express what was going on and then find my way through it. And that's what shamanism provided for me in those early years specifically.
So through your shamanic coaching, are you able to, and because of your understanding and your empathy and background and just all of that, would if somebody had not necessarily similar addictions, but some issues surrounding that and regarding to intergenerational trauma, you as a shamanic coach, and and based on their intentions that they bring to the sessions, be able to help them to, or empower them to be able to find what solutions to, or steps towards a solution for them?
I have a really simple sort of philosophy in how I work with people, and it's that, if people come to me because they're attracted to something. Either they read my book or they've read my articles on Pagan Pages magazine or in Pagan Pages magazine or some other thing, right? Like they've been recommended through somebody. I only work with people who are really serious about healing. Until someone's really serious and they're ready to go after the healing, so they're tired of their stuff, it's not really productive. Like someone really has to want it. So, and I know when someone comes in that all that intergenerational trauma is there. Unless I know that it's somebody that's already done a lot of healing work and that the past isn't plaguing them anymore. If I'm meeting somebody for the first time that I know hasn't done a lot of spiritual work, then that's just a given. That's there. And even people that have done a lot of spiritual work, like I'm still 15 years later, I continuously find lineage pieces for healing. Now, they don't tend to be as intense as they were when I was doing those foundational pieces. But as I move through my life, I'm cycling through those things. So the people that come to me, it's the same thing, right? Like they're going through cycles too. And every time we go through a cycle, even though it feels like, oh yeah, we're working on the same thing, well, you're not really. You're actually at a deeper level of sometimes at the beginning, you kind of skim the surface like those pond skimmers do, right? In a pond. But then the next time you can be more like a fish. You go down that other layer, and then the next time, to the point where eventually you'll get to be one of those bottom feeders, right? Where you're right down at the base of where everything started. But it's a process. So if people come to me and they want to, I always work with whatever their intent is, and we stick with that because their high self knows what it needs. And my job is to be more like just like a guide, a tour guide, helping them through the spirit world to see what's there. Sometimes helping to interpret some things, helping them to move certain things out of their energy field that aren't serving them. So those things come up. People aren't always, when they first meet me, or anyone, of course, it's natural. They're not going to tell me about their addictions or the fact that they were sexually abused when they were a kid. When I go into their energy field, I can feel those things are there. So, and if those things are connected to what their intent is, I'll speak them. For instance, I had a lady come a while back, and she was coming because she was having a lot of, just health issues, physical health issues. And she wanted some relief from those physical health issues. And I looked at her waiver and her questionnaire, and she didn't say anything about trauma, childhood trauma or abuse or anything like that. But as soon as I started working on her leg, I started getting all of these images of her as a kid experiencing sexual abuse. And when I spoke that into the space, she started crying. She said, "How can you see that when you're how can you see what's happening?" So I had to explain to her, like, I wouldn't be saying this if it wasn't connecting to your intent. So your health issues actually have to do with the fact that you have this piece sitting here of trauma that you haven't really dealt with. And until you deal with this, you're going to continue having a lot of physical issues, and they may ramp up to the point where you become disabled, where you can't even do your job anymore. So I wasn't saying it. I don't say those things because I'm nosy and I'm going in there looking to see what's there. It's just that came up as part of her intent, and so I had to speak it into the space. Now, what people do with that information is really not up to me, so I'm not invested in what they do with it, but my job is to show what's there. And the body, I said to this other guy, this construction worker one time who came to see me, he didn't tell me anything about him. His wife was supposed to come for the appointment and she couldn't come. So he showed up at my door and I was like, oh, who are you, right? I was expecting this lady. And he goes, I'm a construction worker and I work hard with my body and I need just some relaxation in my body. So that's all I knew. He came down for Lomi. And as soon as I put him on the table, it was just like I worked almost exclusively on his upper body and on his arms specifically. And, afterwards, he said to me, how did you know I had carpal tunnel syndrome? And that was my main issue. And I said to him, the body never lies. It just tells you exactly what's there. So my job is to tune into what's happening with your body or what your body's saying, and then just do what your body needs to get some release. So I think that's one of the mysterious things about the healing arts. We think that so much of this stuff is hidden, or if we don't say anything, then people won't know. But part of our job as people in the healing arts is to learn to listen and to observe in these more subtle ways that we're often not trained in our mainstream society. So people think that these things are like crazy, or, oh yeah, you're psychic. And it's like, well, no, it's just if you're listening and you're paying attention and you're present in the moment, you're connected to spirit, working in alignment with your client's high self, then these things, with practice, these things will be really evident. And so I think that's the other value of the healing arts, whether you're doing Reiki like we do in our healing team, Becky, or some other modality. It gives people a different view into what's going on for them that they may not even be conscious of. And often we're not, otherwise we would do something to shift it, right?
Well, depending on how comfortable, I think sometimes people are, the thought of what it might be like without it is more terrifying than dealing or putting up with whatever the aches and pains or, what issues you may be going through. Just sometimes the unknown too can be a little scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is definitely when but like you said, that their higher self, or they know, and so sometimes when they come to see you, they don't know exactly why they are there to see you. It's just that they have been brought to you through, and they have listened to their, without realizing it, they have listened to their higher self, to their, whether it be angels, guides, whatever. But the fact that they sometimes, like with the gentleman who showed up, would he necessarily have come to see you if it wasn't for, his, even though his wife had said, no, I can't make it, he could have very easily said, no, not going.
Right.
And
I have people that they come once, they see what the terrain is, and they go, I'm just going to leave that under the carpet for a while.
Yes.
And then sometimes I don't ever see them again, but I don't know how that unfolded in their life. I don't know what that session unfolds in the future. Other people, that happens, and then I don't see them for a couple of years. They come back, and it's like, that thing that we did in that session, I wasn't ready then, but what it did was it opened up this whole journey in my life. So we don't know, right? And that's why people say, well, how often should I come to see you? And I'm like, I don't prescribe that, because your high self knows. You know where to find me. And some people come really often for Lomi. Some people come seasonally, like so that they, work through the fall, they work through the winter, they work through the spring, the summer, and it's kind of like their way of starting every season fresh, right? So yeah, it's just, you can really trust that people know, that their inner wise one knows.
So I know that you are drum teacher. I've loved the times when you've had community drumming, and we've been able to to sing along and to go on the big drum. What attracted you to the native ring drum, or to becoming a drum chief?
Um, I've always been really connected to nature since I was a little kid. So I would go out, and when, things in my house were too hectic, or there was too many people, or it was too chaotic, I would go across the street to a big cedar tree, and I would climb to the top, and I would just hang out there for hours. And it was my way of just like decompressing, going into myself. And I think I've been singing since before I could actually talk. And when I was a kid, I was constantly singing. Adults would say, "Oh my God, the kid never shuts up," right? But it was also my way of releasing stress. And I was always able to hear music in nature when I was out there. So for me, when I started shamanism, and I had an elder say to me, you know, that anyone can hear songs in nature and bring them back to the community, if the song's spirit says that this is what it's to be used for. That made total sense to me. And I don't go out looking for these songs. It's just there they are, right? And I've just learned through shamanism to pay attention in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So the songs that I've caught from spirit, they don't belong to me. They belong to spirit, to nature. They were already there. And even today, like 15 years after I first heard some of those songs are still teaching me. And every time I sing them with the community, or I sing them in groups, I learn something different about their individual alchemy, and how they work. So I didn't really go after this. It's just, like everything else in my life, it was just like, this is the next
Natural progression.
thing to do. Yeah.
And I know that you have now taken this into like the next part with your singamony. Like, so last fall you started a monthly get together at the beginning of the month to lead us in drumming and singing. And I would like to know what inspired you to start this group. And because there's a mixture of native drumming and singing, like the songs that you have heard from nature, and then we shift into sometimes Celtic, sometimes maybe not exactly folk music, but there is that different energy again to it. So what inspired you? And then I guess from there, the evolution of it to where you now have it twice a month.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So first of all, I just want to say that what we do in Singamonies, we sing spiritual music from around the world. And that's something that I've been involved in. I've sung in choirs pretty much my whole life, like since elementary school. And I had the great fortune to sing with the Universal Gospel Choir in Vancouver for 7 years almost. And we didn't only sing gospel music, we sang spiritual music from different traditions around the world. And much like the songs from nature, those songs also have their specific alchemy. And I noticed just how healing it was singing those kinds of songs. Even though I've been singing since I was a kid, mainstream music is different because it's got a different intention than the spiritual music does. So although they're both healing, they can be both healing, because those spiritual songs have a particular intention, a particular tradition that they're connected to, and a kind of medicine that's specific to that song. They are very healing. So I was dreaming with this for many years to create a ceremony where we could come together and sing these songs with an intention. And the intention changes depending on what's going on in the world, what's going on, what season we're in. So, on Saturday, we're doing a solstice. We're concentrating on the solstice and that eclipse and the new moon that's happening all this weekend, and working with the particular energy of that time and aligning with it so that we can do whatever healing work and transformational work needs to happen within there. I don't sing native songs. I sing because I know a lot of Indigenous songs from different traditions because I've been honored to be able to participate in those ceremonies. But I don't have permission to sing those songs. So I sing them when I'm in the ceremonies, when I'm invited there. But all the songs that we do in ceremony on the frame drums and on the big drum are songs that have been caught from nature, either by myself or by friends that have given me permission to sing those songs and have taught me something about the alchemy of those songs. Every Indigenous tradition around the world, including in the UK with the Druids, they have their own ways of catching songs from nature and then using those in ceremony. So the only ones that I really have any way of singing are the ones that are connected to my own ancestors, or the ones I've been given permission to sing, by other people. But they're all powerful. That's the thing. Like, they may sound different, but they all hit you in your heart. They're meant to open your heart. They're meant to. The drum also shakes up any low vibrating energy in people's energy field. So sometimes when people first come to drumming, they're like, "Oh my God, I just felt nauseous the whole time." It's like, well, yeah, that's actually that energy that's being shaken up that wants to move. So it's deceptively simple and it's fun, but it's very powerful. As you know, because you've also brought your crystal bowls to play a lot of times at ceremony too, and you've been present. So, and no matter what culture people come from, there's a connection to music for most people. And music can help us access memories, emotions, our inner world in a way that words just can't do in the same way. There's a reason why music, like singing and dance and drumming and storytelling, have been used, since our ancient ancestors were here for healing.
So now you are doing it on Zoom because, for the last 3 months now. So anybody, anywhere can join. They just need to get in touch with you and you would send them the link. So how do they get in touch with you to, because this Saturday it's happening at 12 noon Mountain Daylight Time. Correct. So depending on where they are in the world, they can join. Like if they were over in say the time zone of Great Britain, Norway, along there, it would be 8 o'clock at night. So still early enough for them to join.
Yeah, and that's why I chose that time, because I do have friends in the UK that want to join. So
that's right, in Wales, right?
That's right, and in Scotland and England as well. Yeah, so the easiest way is just to go to my website, spiraldanceshamanics.com, and under the workshops tab, all the information is there about ceremony, so people can learn a little bit more about it.
And then they could send you a message and you would send them the link then. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, that's essentially what it says when you click on workshops. It gives you my email address and then I'll send you a link.
That would be perfect, because I know that I find that the energy is still there, even though we're not in person, that the energy that comes through on the Zoom is still just as powerful as if we were all together in one. So then, are you going to continue doing this on Zoom? Like, are you going to have maybe an in-person, like physical, we could get together and have another where it could be a global community?
Post-pandemic, yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. And I think part of it too is I've worked online with families for 16 years. And one thing I've noticed too is that for some people that have that are more introverted or have experienced a lot of trauma or not don't feel safe physically in the physical presence of some people, or of people, having an online format where they can participate and start to heal from the comfort of their own home behind a screen, where they don't have to worry about people having to worry about their physical safety or boundaries, that's really transformative for a lot of people. So I know a lot of people don't like the online format, and I get that. It's not the same as being in person with people. But I think it's important to have both options, because for some people, their way into healing is by having the screen there to make them feel safer so that they can do the work. And both those things are valid. And like you said, energy just follows intention. So it's weird, right? Because we're all on the computer, but we can feel each other in the ceremony just like we went for in person, like in a sweat lodge or somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one blessing that I am so thankful for, is that even though we have this separation, when it comes down to it, we are still, like, again, based on intention, but we could come online and we could be around the world and we still can connect, like have a really deep connection, can really feel the power of the ceremony, or the power of the heart opening when we do ceremony. It's, I when we close off, when we're finished after at the end, I always feel my heart just goes kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. It's like it is so full.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't realize that. This is like a beautiful lesson, I find, for myself. It was like an eye opener as to what the possibilities are, and how beautifully energy is able to move and to bring us together, even though we're thousands of miles apart.
Yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for with technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and although it will never replace the things we can learn when we're in person together, because so much of what we learn is through modeling and our mirror neurons in our brain. We need that in-person contact too to learn certain things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to learn. But yeah, it's just such a blessing to have the modality. And then that way, somebody that really resonates with something that I'm doing can still join from the other side of the world, and vice versa. There are colleagues that I've met, shamanic colleagues working in different traditions around the world, that I have never met physically yet, but we've made a really good connection online. And I follow their work, and they follow my work, and we learn from each other, right? So I think as shamanic practitioners, even worldwide, it's been a really good tool for that.
We become definitely very much of a global community.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just within either our city or our country. It's now, there are people that we can learn from, that inspire us, that we can, and like, be able to learn from, that are in different parts of the world. I'm watching right now podcasts in the morning, Humanity Rising, put out through Ubiquity University, and the speakers that they are having on, and the discussion that is going on, is it's hopeful, it's inspirational, uh, and it's mind expanding, and knowing that there are people out there who um, share similar interests, and caring, and desire to make the world a better place, and for people to be empowered, and make conscious choices, and be aware. There's so many different speakers that they have, and they all, even though they're in different areas, it still all comes together beautifully. So yeah, I used to have a really kind of, not exactly a version, but being of the old school, it was like I was pulled kicking and screaming into the 21st century in a way. And this self-isolation, this pandemic has actually opened my eyes up to the possibilities and the potentials that with online that I would never have seen otherwise. So yes, yeah, there are blessings in many different things. Sometimes it's even then what we perceive at first to be negative can bring in boundless possibilities. So yeah. So you also, I'm just thinking about you help to, or you are on um, 4 CDs through the Rainbow Bridge Ceremonial Society. That's where you are drumming and singing songs that have been brought in either by spirit, from nature, what you've picked up. If people were interested in maybe getting one of these CDs, you would be able to through.
Yeah, they could go through the Rainbow Bridge Society website, Ceremonial Society website. I think the address is rainbowbridgesociety.ca. And they can buy them directly from there. Although there are songs that I caught that I technically have the copyright to, because we live in this weird world where people own things, even if they're not things that really belong to them. Although I regained the copyright, I've allowed permission for the RBCS to use those songs, and so that's why they appear on the CDs. And but so they can get the CDs through them, but also those songs are open for everybody to sing. So they're open songs. There's some songs that are not open, that are only sung by specific people or in specific situations. But those CDs are available.
I just put that out there because I know that listening to you and the 2 other people out in Vancouver when you were producing the 3rd CD, I just, I could have it on and doing things, but it's there in the background, and it's that it's like that drum beat is just, my heart just starts going in sync with it, and it just calms, and it really, it's like almost helping in that connection to spirit, and helping in getting grounded to Mother Earth, and all of that. It's just, it's such a beautiful tool or medium in to maybe possibly getting to that point, if people have problems, really relaxing and just allowing their spirit to calm and hear.
Yeah, listening to it's really powerful, and because even just listening to it changes us. I always say to people, if you're too shy to come to Sing-A-Moni and sing, you can just come and drum. I always encourage people to sing, because there's something different that happens when you use your voice. A lot of people have a very blocked 5th chakra, a throat chakra. And that's because of all of the trauma that's happened in our society around singing. People being told not to sing when they're little, or having it be something that only some people can do, right? Like the talented people. Whereas I approach singing as, that's your birthright. Singing, dancing, storytelling, those are earth-based practices, healing practices that have been around since the beginning of time, because they work.
Yeah.
To help people to heal. And so for me, although the listening to the songs is powerful, and that's a great place for people to start, eventually learning the songs, learning how to drum them, learning how to sing them, that will take people to a different level of healing. So the way people go through that arc is up to them. My job is just to create a really safe space for people to sing and for people to learn the drumming. But it's definitely, if you're looking for an edgy thing to try, it's a good way to challenge yourself and to open your heart at the same time, to learn how to open your heart. Mm-hmm.
So if the singimony resonates with you, if it makes you curious about what benefits you may have from doing it, I strongly recommend going into Jen's website, spiraldanceshamanics.com, and sending her an email and saying, please send me the link, because especially like with this Saturday at 12 o'clock noon Mountain Daylight Time, you're incorporating, it's going to, in a way, also be a solstice ceremony at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm. It's always couched in ceremony. So the songs, we have an intention, and there's always, we always do a ritual or some kind of a component in between the drumming and the songs that we do without drumming in the ceremony. So yeah, and it's a very powerful weekend for ceremonies. So if you can't come to Singamoni, for sure, do something different, even if it's just, lighting a candle and sending, anything that you don't want to carry with you anymore into the candle and putting your new intentions in. All that stuff is really powerful.
Thank you very much for that, Jen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So that's it for this week. My guest again, Jennifer Engracio. My name is Becky Nakamura. My business again is wavesofki energy work, where I do Reiki, shamanic Reiki, crystal singing bowl, sound therapy, and it is an opportunity to empower yourself to release that which you choose to no longer be carrying around in this lifetime of issues or past baggage that you are just tired of carrying. Your sessions are based upon your intention that you bring. So again, this is you directing your own healing and the path that you wish to take going forward. So thank you very much for your presence. And if you were just coming in now, this has been recorded and will be up on the At Waves of Ki podcast if you wish to watch again at a later date. Thank you.